Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting for Wednesday, May 15th, and we're starting right at 6 o'clock. At this time, I would like to confirm the agenda, and I think we have notations in our skeleton minutes about some potential changes. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors who would like to add them to our agenda tonight? Seeing and hearing none. Anything from administration or ledge services?
Thank you, Worship and Council. Administration would like to request that Council amend the agenda as follows to delete item 6.2 on the agenda, which is advocacy update, advice from officials, FOIP section 24(1)A, and then move item 10.5, diversity, equity, and inclusion declaration to come after delegations, creating a new 6.0 business section on the agenda.
Thank you for that. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Deputy Mayor Langmaid?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to move that Council adopt the May 15th, 2024 regular Council meeting agenda as amended to delete 6.2 advocacy update advice from officials FOIP section 24(1)A and move 10.5 diversity, equity, and inclusion declaration to come after delegations, creating a new 6.0 business section and subsequently shifting the remainder of the agenda.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no public hearing tonight. That brings us to item 4, public comments. Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on any items for tonight's agenda? And do we have any online or have called in? No? Okay. Then we move now to, I imagine I should just wait, or do you have nothing online as far as, no one's, okay. All right, we move now to 5, delegations, 5.1, Tour Alberta for Cancer. Claudette, are you doing any introductions or would you like to? If you wouldn't mind, just press the red microphone button and then introduce yourself and we can begin. And good evening and welcome.
Great, thank you so much for having me. She said I was going to introduce myself, so sorry about that. My name is Crystal Clements. I'm the Director of Events and Community Outreach for the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Last year, we hosted our signature event here in Strathmore at the Rodeo Grounds, July 21st and 22nd. It's called the Enbridge Tour Alberta for Cancer, and we'd first like to thank all of you and this community of Strathmore for welcoming us last year with open arms. And we wanted to kind of just give a little overview of what we did with the funds that were raised here in this community and what the event is all about. Last year, we had over 1,200 riders and 300 volunteers, and we raised $5.9 million for Albertans facing cancer. Each one of our 1,200 participants not only signed up to raise $2,500, they each committed to cycling either 100 or 60 kilometers a day for 2 days, which is no small feat. And I'm quite proud to say that our oldest rider, Dale Risden, is 84 years old and from right here in Strathmore. And I have he's got quite a fan club at the foundation. I would just like to share a few cancer statistics that you might not be aware of. 1 in 2 Albertans will hear the words "you have cancer" in their lifetime, and 1 in 4 will pass away from that diagnosis. In 2024, 23,000 Albertans will face their own cancer diagnosis. That's 63 people a day in this province that will hear the words "you have cancer." 24% of all deaths in Alberta in 2019 were related to cancer. It's not all bad news, though. Some positive statistics. Over the past 25 years, cancer mortality rates in Alberta have declined. According to the Alberta Health Services, cancer mortality rates decreased by an average of 2.1% per year from 2004 to 2014. And this trend is attributed to advancements in cancer prevention, early detection, and treatment strategies. The money raised from this event goes to 4 key things in this province. I should say the majority of this money also does stay in the province of Alberta. We support 1 clinical trial outside of the province, but all of the other money stays here in the province. The 4 key things that we support are patient financial assistance, patient navigation, clinical trials and research, and we support all 17 cancer centers in the province of Alberta. As a fundraising partner for every cancer center in Alberta, we make life better for Albertans facing cancer by supporting world-class world-class research, patient care right here in our own backyard. Being that we are the official fundraising partner for every cancer center across the province, including the Cross Cancer Institute in Edmonton and the soon-to-be-open Arthur J.E. Child Comprehensive Cancer Center in Calgary. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Cancer Center is set to open this year in October, and it'll be an incredible moment in history for Alberta and for Canada. The Arthur J.E. Child will be the largest cancer center in Canada and the second largest in North America. The center is an impressive 1.3 million square feet, 7 times the size of the current Tom Baker. 110,000 square feet of that will be dedicated to research space, and the center will also include 160 inpatient beds, 100 patient rooms, 90 plus chemo chairs, and 12 radiation vaults. This is a game changer for Albertans and for Canada, attracting the brightest and best to our province. Thanks to our donors, the Alberta Cancer Foundation funds programs that focus on patients' unique needs and reduces disparities in cancer treatment care in undeserved populations from across Alberta. One of these programs is our Patient Financial Assistance Program. The challenges that come with a cancer diagnosis often extend beyond the medical treatment itself, such as navigating a complex healthcare system and balancing the demands of day-to-day living during treatments. These challenges can increase for people with restricted income opportunities, no employment health insurance, and who live in urban or rural communities across the province. The Alberta Cancer Foundation Patient Financial Assistance Program offers support to eligible patients who have financial needs, addressing some of the direct care costs such as travel, accommodations for appointments, medications that aren't covered by insurance. Patients can also use a portion of their funds towards other indirect expenses such as groceries or utility bills. Last year, the Patient Financial Assistance Program provided financial support to hundreds of families in 135 communities across our province. The second program we funded is the Patient Navigation Program. The Provincial Patient Navigation Program employs registered nurses or other navigators with specialized training in cancer care to assist eligible Albertans who have been diagnosed with cancer and their families. The program promotes equality and accessibility in healthcare by focusing on people-centered support for 3 specific populations of Albertans living with cancer: people living in rural areas, adolescents and young adults, and Indigenous people. Since its inception, the Provincial Navigation Program has helped well over 40,000 Albertans navigate their cancer journey. And lastly, we support clinical trials and research. Clinical trials are research studies that evaluate the safety and effectiveness of new medications and medical devices before they are adopted as standard of care. Clinical trials provide alternative treatment options for patients who've exhausted all other options, and to lead to advancements of eventually becoming the standard of care for patients in the future. They lead to more moments and they save lives. The Alberta Cancer Foundation supports every cancer-focused clinical trial in Alberta. Alberta is a leader in clinical trials in Canada. Here in the last year alone, 890 patients were enrolled in clinical trials and 87 cancer-focused clinical trials received approval. Each clinical trial has the potential to help hundreds and thousands of patients through research and discoveries. During 2022-2023, the Alberta Cancer Foundation invested $2.7 million into clinical trial activity, resulting in an additional $24 million in external clinical trial contracts from industry and academic sponsors. The Alberta Cancer Foundation dedicated $27 million to cancer research, treatment, and care across the province last year alone. So now that you know all about what we do with the funds raised, I'm excited to say that we will be back out here riding again in July on the 20th and 21st. And in addition to filling up all of your hotels and restaurants and coffee shops, we are using services of many of your Strathmore businesses as possible. This year, we've employed the 403 Security Company. Kim's Catering will be doing our Saturday night dinner. The Cheetah Lions will be our bartenders. The Strathmore Stampede Grounds, obviously, has been our home, away from home. Stacomi Smith will be our Indigenous dancer again this year, as well as we've received some generous donations. Rocky's Bakery, which I must say I'm very sad was closed when I drove through town today, donated donuts for all of our sponsor tents and all of our volunteering staff. The Sobeys Strathmore donated pop and water. The Co-op donated Gatorade. Origin Beer Brewery donated beer. The Strathmore Bottle Depot took all our bottles back and sent us a nice check. The Strathmore and District Agricultural Society gave us the venue at a discounted cost. And the U19 Strathmore Ringette team is volunteering to do all of our parking assistance this year. This year will be our 16th year hosting this event. And when we hit our $6 million goal, we will raise $100 million collectively in this province with this event. And we look forward to celebrating that big milestone here in Strathmore with you in July. We also love it here so much, we've confirmed we will be back here to ride again in 2025. So this July, when you see us out on the road, please wave and cheer us on and as we make as big an impact as possible in the community. Keeping an eye out for yellow flags that people have on their bikes. Those are people currently going through treatment or cancer survivors, and they need a little extra encouragement. So once again, on behalf of the Alberta Cancer Foundation, our participants, and the cancer patients here in Alberta, we want to thank you so much for hosting us last year, this year, and next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for choosing Strathmore as one of your stops on the tour. We're glad to be a part of it, and I know that all our businesses and support groups are really happy to have you as well. Do we have any questions for our presenter, Councillor Peterson and Councillor Wiley?
Thank you for that. Do you have contact information? Just
course,
in
yes.
case somebody would like to reach out to you with opportunities. I know Wheatland Society of the Arts, if you needed door prizes,
Oh, great,
they'd
yeah.
be more than happy. But I'm thinking that there are other groups too that would like to probably reach out.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. We have 300 volunteer shifts available for the weekend if people want to do that, and we're always looking for sponsors and for donors for sure. Yeah, and I think they have my contact information, but I can make sure for sure that you get
The
it.
town has it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Wiley.
I know this might seem a strange thing, but it might not hurt to actually say your email. Both the local journalists watch the council proceedings, and they would be able to take it down and then post it in their news article.
Sure. Yeah, it's Crystal, Krystal .Clements, CLEMENTS @ albertacancer.ca.
Yeah, very good. And to the news at home, I hope they do an article on this. To our administration, is communications going to be putting out some information on this leading up to the event? I suppose that's a question for CAO Scoble.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah. Well, if we get the information, we always repost stuff like this. So.
Fantastic. I just know last year there was a lot of talk and some confusion as to what was going on in town. So whatever we can do to help. Thank you.
I'll take the hit on that one. I should have come and spoke to you last year before the first year, but it got away from us. It was a little crazy.
I'm sure you had lots going on. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
Any other comments or questions for our presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much again, and we wish you all the best with this great endeavor.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We move now to item 6, business, 6.1, diversity, equity, and inclusion declaration. Mark Pretzlaff. Good evening, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Excuse me. I'm here to speak tonight regarding a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Declaration, or DEI. As Council is aware, Council confirmed 6 strategic priorities that align with their, for the rest of the remainder of this term: affordable living, financial sustainability, intentional community development, climate resiliency, economic development, and community wellness. As part of the intentional community development priority, administration has identified the creation of a DEI declaration as one of the ways to implement this priority. Administration has observed this approach in other communities and feel that this is a common approach to ensure that everyone is welcome and so that they feel a part of this community. Strathmore has a long history of welcoming newcomers to the community, and this declaration is one such way to illustrate its openness. Lastly, this declaration is a next evolution to the town's anti-racism initiatives that have been in place for several years. That's the end of my presentation. So if there's any questions from council, I'll be prepared to answer them.
Thank you, Mark. I think we had thought that Councillor Ruben Breaker could be here tonight, but he was unable to make it. But he did want to let us know that Siksika, there are many Siksika members who will be watching tonight, and he just wanted to express his regrets that he couldn't be here tonight. Any questions for Mark or comments? I guess we have questions first, and then we could put a motion on the floor. Any questions for Mark? Seeing none. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Mark, are you the author of this declaration?
Through the chair, it's a collaborative approach through members of most of the FCSS department.
Okay. So, just for the public's awareness, can you explain what Omoxacoke is?
Through the chair, I guess actually, I guess I can't. I'll have to defer to a counselor or one of our FCSS. Sokami Smith is one of the people that helped develop this. So.
Did you want me to respond? Sure. My understanding, Your Worship, is the word Omoxacoke is the Blackfoot word used to denote this area, particularly the town of Strathmore. In the Blackfoot language, it means big corner, differentiated by the Blackfoot when they would make the trek to Mohkinstsis, or their word for elbow, which is the designation for Calgary. So they delineated this as Omoxacoke, meaning big corner, as opposed to Nameka, which is little corner, and denoting where they turned.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering, like, as far as like, so if we, I guess, interchange the word Strathmore for this one part where it says, just as Strathmore occupies a prominent place in our landscape. So since we're in Strathmore, I'm kind of confused about how we would say that this occupies a prominent place in our landscape when it is the town itself. Do you have any comments on why that's phrased that way?
Through the chair, no, I can't say why the committee elected to go with this way versus replacing it with Strathmore. I think obviously it's to recognize its importance to our neighbors in Siksika and everywhere else.
Okay, I will make a motion then, if nobody else wants to ask any questions. Is that all right? Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right. I will move that council adopt the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Declaration as presented in Attachment 1 with the following amendment. I would like to exchange the word equity for equality. And that's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Are there any questions or comments? Just a quick question, Councillor Montgomery. What would be the reasoning for equity switching with equality? I just wanted to understand.
Oh, I'm guessing that was probably like an error on their part. Obviously, we're striving for equality, and that's why I think it's better to have equality in there, because we believe that all people are equal and should be treated equally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on the motion? Councillor Wiley?
At the turn of the 20th century, there was a doctor named Dr. Herman, I believe his name is Warshaw, and he's the one who made famous the ink blot test, where two people could look at the same ink blots and see entirely different things. So for instance, One person would swear they saw a bat, and another person would say, no, clearly that is two bears high-fiving. Warshak was fascinated about this, and he came to conclude that you could figure out what type of person it was based on what they were seeing in the ink blot. When I read this statement, this declaration, I think it's an ink blot test to see if a person identifies more progressive or more conservative. It must be, because when I read this, I read things like welcoming, diversity, identity, individualism, richness of differences, a vibrant tapestry, authenticity is our anthem, journeying together toward the future, and I don't understand it. I think, though, a lot of people read this and they're excited. They see progress, they see change, they see moving toward this future, and it fills them with, I guess, a lot of joy and anticipation. Yet conservatives look at this and they find it all a little bit confusing. Conservatives, you have to remember, want to conserve what was good from the past. What were the things in our history that worked, and what could we do about them? If I were to ever write an inclusivity statement, it would include the thousands of years of civilizational thought on how societies can get along, how we can work together. There would be words in it like human dignity. It would be defined as an intrinsic value. As a Christian, I would say that's imago Dei. The image of God is on all people. I think if you get the human dignity wrong and you take that out of the equation, everything else you get wrong. If I were to write a statement, it would include things about the common good, how we're a team, how we need to work together, how we need to see the human dignity of each other, how we need to value the person and their differences, but make sure that they are free to achieve that common good, free to become the best version of themselves, free to reach their human potential. If I were to write this, it would include things about the rights and freedoms that Canadians value, that in the 1980s we made a crack at this. How can human beings work together? I would look at that Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I would find the good things in there that work. If I were to do this, there's no way I would leave the word solidarity out of there. Solidarity is the idea, the age-old idea, that we must love one another, that we must treat each other as we would want to be treated, that we are our brother's keepers, that we're responsible for one another. People need to understand that when we adopt this modernist language, because it sounds cool and trendy, us conservatives find it foreign and confusing. We question, why do we need to abandon all the good things of the past and experiment with these things? I won't be supporting this declaration because, frankly, I find it befuddling and slightly bemusing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly appreciate Councillor Wiley's comments, and I don't understand his perspective, but I respect it. And I think that's the beauty of this declaration, is that it values and respects all voices. And I think that, you know, one example in terms of conservatism, I see myself as a conservative on many, many levels. But for me, to be a super conservative, I would have to be Indigenous, because then I would want to be able to value what was good in the past, because they certainly hold their traditions and their past in a very close and dear way. And they saw good in that, all that was good. So to me, they would be the ultra example of what is conservative today. I think that Councillor Wiley makes a wonderful point when he talks about dignity, because, and if there was one word that I would add to this declaration, although I think that it is superimposed on every piece of it, it would be a statement of dignity. I don't find joy in this statement. What I find is hope. And I think about a writer, a recent writer in our modern day, a white woman whose name is Robin DiAngelo, and she wrote a book that was extremely instructive to me. She's written several, but the one that impacted me the most in my practice was a book that she called Nice Racism: How Progressive White People Perpetuate Racial Harm. And she says, when we look at skill development and relationship building and strategic anti-racism practice, it becomes clear that the qualification most often used to establish the idea that we are not racist, exclusionary, or equitable in our practices comes from our sincere belief that everything is okay because we are nice. In my perspective, that certainly rang true. And I was extremely grateful that I had people that challenged me in that perspective. That what I deemed as good for me in my conservative world was not necessarily good for everyone. So I'm on a journey, and I see this statement as one that is hopeful. It's not perfect. It's not going to change the world overnight, but I believe that it makes space for people who have not had the benefits of equity, particularly, and inclusion.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. My only statement on this is I actually just called up the definition or the difference between equality versus equity. And it's a little concerning for me to just naturally switch from equity to equality. Equality in this definition means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So I believe if we switch over to equality, we will move away, and it could pave the way for future things coming before this council, where we wouldn't be allowed to do extra things for members of the community who may not have the equality. So I won't be supporting this motion. Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, so actually, I was reading on Facebook today about the possibility of this thing passing, and there was people that, funny enough, were, worried about it passing because, they thought that it was just an empty statement, just kind of, there's no action to follow it up. And then there was people that were worried that it would pass and that it would not be empty words. And I guess I can speak to both of those groups right now, actually. So next week, I have or not next week, but at the first meeting in June, to assuage both those groups. I have a motion that I will be bringing forward where I will be asking council to support having the town review all of its policies and practices to ensure that we are treating all people equally without regard to their race, their color, their ethnicity, or their cultural background. So we will be, if it were to pass, that would be our council making a step, a concrete demonstration that we are not just putting forward empty words with this statement, that we actually plan to back it up with action to seek a world of where people are treated the same without regards for their race. I find it a bit concerning, I guess, that there's an issue with treating everybody equally without regard for things like their race. I would be, I believe that that's what we're all striving for, isn't it? We're all striving towards equality, and Yeah, so I mean, I'm not even sure how to respond exactly to that. I mean, like we're talking about equality of outcome, and I don't believe anyone here does everybody want equality of outcome, no matter how little or how hard somebody tries, it should make no difference. We should all just expect the same outcome. I'm not sure that that's a great kind of way to try to build our society, and that's why I assumed that we meant equality, not equity, because it's true, equity itself is actually just special treatment for certain people, and we are all humans in this community. It shouldn't matter what color your skin is or what race, well, actually, the United Nations says that race is a construct, actually, so we shouldn't even really be talking about that necessarily, but it shouldn't matter what color your skin is. There is nothing that we can assume about somebody simply because we know their race. We can't assume, their education level. We can't assume, whether they come from a good family or a bad family. We can't assume if they're rich or poor simply by looking at their skin. And that's why it's important that we treat people equally. And that's why I think it's important that if we're going to have a declaration, that we should, as Councillor Peterson said, we should make it hopeful. And I believe we're hoping for equality as our result. Thank you.
Well, my comments would be that I don't believe this declaration is just fluff or empty statements, because our staff and our council is already doing things in the trenches to help people who are not in good situations, who are not in the same equal situations and others. And I'm glad you mentioned your notice of motion, because I think if your motion were to pass, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It would stop us from doing anything for any group that may have difficulties. For example, I've been volunteer coaching at the sports center. 2- and 3-year-olds, 4- and 5-year-olds, volunteer, no money. I have a Ukrainian family who is struggling financially. If your motion passed, I couldn't, and I did. I went out of my way to find services and help set up a meeting to help these people afford their place to stay, have money, get them steered towards Jumpstart so the little girl could possibly join gymnastics. If your motion were to pass on June 5th, I couldn't have done anything. I couldn't have talked to anyone around here to do that. We couldn't help Siksika. We couldn't help a young man, apply for grants so that she could have a powwow in our town. What it would be is do nothing. Do nothing for anyone. Just do nothing, because you couldn't do something for one group because it might possibly eliminate all the others. There's this fear that some extreme thinkers have that if we do something to help one group, it means we're excluding everyone else. But every group can come to us for help. Every group, every person could possibly come to us for some supports. And I don't believe that switching equality for equity is a good thing in this motion. I will not support this motion. And I'll be eagerly anticipating your motion coming on June 5th as well. Deputy Mayor Langmaid.
Thank you. I'm also concerned about the change in language from.
Can't hear
you. Thank you. I'm also concerned about the change in language between equity and equality, and I think Mayor Fuel summed it up correctly, but I'll put a little bit of an example out there. Equality would be giving everyone the same pair of shoes. Equity is actually giving everyone a pair of shoes that fit, and that's a big difference, especially if you're the one that has to wear shoes that are too small. So that's, to me, that is a very important change in language, and while I can agree that equality of outcome is the goal, equity and equitable practice is how we get there. Thank you.
Councillor Peterson and Councillor Montgomery.
Your Worship, I just wanted to recognize your explanation or your reading of the definitions, and just to say that the presentation that we had from the Alberta Cancer Association just prior identified cancer programs that support Indigenous people for reasons that they see as obvious. And so your explanation and your identifying the definitions of that speak to that eloquently. And I really appreciate that. And I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Wiley.
So just to be clear, so you help that Ukrainian family because of the color of their skin?
Your worship, that's really out of line.
I'm just wondering.
It's out of line,
That's
your worship.
the implication
It's an
of what you
inappropriate
said.
comment in this chamber. It does not dignify this chamber.
Well, my motion next week or in June has to deal with treating people the same without regard for the color of their skin. And Mayor Fuel indicated he could not support
Your
that.
motion talks about town services to be offered to people and that no one should be treated differently, like we shouldn't offer town services to anyone based on those things that you mentioned. And that would mean, for example, the powwow. We can't help them apply for grants because they're Indigenous? Is that what you're saying?
No, and I guess we can debate it at the actual meeting, but no, it means that we would help people without regard for the color of their skin or what background they are culturally. So that means an Indigenous person, a European person, a Filipino person, a person of African descent could all come and be treated equally by the town of Strathmore. They would all receive the same access to help. You know, with regards to your comment about helping that Ukrainian family, I think that's great. And I would hope that you would help any family that was struggling financially without regard for their ethnic background or their cultural background or their, you know, I guess it's inappropriate to say, but their race. I don't believe you would have any regard for that. But I think that somebody who's born in Strathmore, somebody who's born in Strathmore should obviously be treated just as well as somebody who comes to Strathmore from a land far away. And so anyways, I understand that our council's not striving for equality in the end, and that's why this motion will fail. But here we are. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think you actually make a really good point because we shouldn't get into the June 5th meeting and the things that could come up with that motion that you're bringing your notice of motion. We should focus solely on this declaration tonight, and I think we have strayed away from that. So we do have a motion on the floor to approve the declaration with the swap or the exchange of the word equality for equity. Is that correct? Is that the correct one, Councillor Montgomery? You want the word equality instead of equity? Yeah, I mean, that's the amendment. That's the amendment. That's the new motion that you put forward. Okay. Are there any more comments about the motion for the declaration and the wording change? Councillor Wiley.
Sure, so mine is about the difference between equity and equality. Everyone in this council wants what's best for the people of Strathmore, like clearly. The question, when you ask the difference between equity and equality, the question is who gets to decide? So in the example given of our mayor helping that family, that's an individual helping a family find the resources from businesses or nonprofit organizations. When governments start passing policies, and I'm not saying this is a policy, when governments start passing equity policies, what happens is then government takes the driver's seat and government gets to decide who gets the resources. So historically, when Canada looked at the vocabulary and chose that we believe in equality in Canada, that all people are created equal, that's not government deciding, that's just accepting a matter of fact. But when governments change the wording to equity, What they're doing is they're taking control of resource distribution. And that small change is everything. Who gets to decide? Individuals, families, and businesses, or governments? And so I wouldn't ever support the word equity coming from a government document.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Councillor Peterson.
So relevant to Councillor Wiley's position, Your Worship, this council decides every single meeting on resource distribution. In fact, today, we're going to talk about our tax rate increase. And everything in that increase is relevant to how we distribute resources in our community. And we decide which resources are going to, sometimes to facilities, sometimes to groups. We have in that budget provincial requisitions that are defined for us that say we designate X number of dollars as per the provincial guidelines to provide requisition to schools and seniors. And so we divide up money, we decide how many thousands of dollars is going to go into recreation. We determine the distribution of the resources within this community because we were elected to do so. And if our community determines that we haven't distributed those resources in a way that they are approving of, then we won't be sitting here any longer. I don't know whether it's a decision of equity or quality or what it is, but we definitively decide every day on resource distribution.
Councillor Wiley and then Councillor Langmaid, Deputy Mayor Langmaid.
Sure, just quickly, but I can assure the people of Strathmore if I'm making decisions on resources, it's based on the best of my ability, on the recognition of the equality of all humans, and for the common good as a team, us working together. And it would not be based on equity outcomes.
And I agree with that, Your Worship. I certainly agree. But in our strategic plan, we recognize that, and Councillor Wiley's absolutely correct. But we also recognize equity, diversity, and inclusion in our strategic plan.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought it would be interesting to share this piece that's written, and I'm sharing just a portion of it, obviously, from the Government of Canada website explaining Canada's rights and freedoms that the Charter protects. And I'm going to scroll down here to equality rights and read this excerpt. However, the Charter does not, everyone is entitled to the same benefits provided by laws or government policies. However, the Charter does not require the government to always treat people in exactly the same way. Sometimes protecting equality means that we must adapt rules or standards to take account of people's differences. An example of this would be allowing people to observe different religious holidays without losing their job. There's one thing in Strathmore that's always kind of been front of mind for me, and I think it kind of demonstrates equality and equity as well. At one point during my tenure as councillor, we were provided a booklet of resources that we could give out to the community if they had questions on who to contact regarding different issues around town. I love that booklet. I give it out frequently. That booklet's only available in English. If you don't speak English, I can't give you that information in a way that you can understand it. Equity is making sure that everyone has access to something that they can understand. Equity would be providing those booklets in a language that someone can read and understand so that they can be an active participant in our community. That's why I believe in equity over equality in this definition and in this case, and why I think it is so important that we preserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jonathan, would you read Councillor Montgomery's motion just so that we all have clarity on it? Is there further discussion? Do you want to discuss this further, or do we want to? Jonathan, call the question. Can you read that motion for us, please?
Yeah, thank you, Worshiping Council. So the motion that we have right now is that council adopt the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Declaration as presented in attachment 1 with the following amendment to change the word equity with the word equality.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Motion is carried. So we are looking for a motion. Councillor Peterson?
Oh, I'm looking for the motion. Just a second.
It's on
For
the
the-
skeleton.
Go ahead,
skeleton.
Counselor.
I move that council adopt the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Declaration as presented in attachment 1.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, is there further discussion on this motion? Seeing none. Councillor Montgomery?
So I've heard the example before of, as Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lang made mention about equality would be giving everybody, what was it, shoes, the same size of shoes?
Equality is giving everyone the same pair of shoes. Equity is giving everyone a pair of shoes that fit.
Okay. A more accurate, actually, way to interpret it would be equality would be giving everybody shoes, and equity would be giving only certain groups of people shoes, you know, either depending on what the color of their skin was or their, like various differences. Equity would say these groups, and for the people at home, if you don't believe me, look up the term equity deserving groups, okay? And you will see a list of the type of people that are, according to institutions in Canada and the government of Canada, deserving of equity. Now, what does deserving of equity mean? It means deserving of special treatment, okay? It's not about giving everybody the same treatment, okay? Which, as taxpayers, you should all expect to be treated the same. When you walk into the town office, you should be able to expect that you will be seen as a person and not based on the color of your skin when you walk in the door. The town staff, obviously, should not be looking at you and going, am I gonna help this person? And then as the Family Guy clip, you know, kind of goes, they pull out a little, a paint swatch and say, does this person's skin color match the colors I'm allowed to give help to? Obviously, that's not what the taxpayers of our community want. I don't recall in the 2 times I've run for election hearing anybody say to me, you know, Jason, when you get in there, I expect you to treat, you know, these groups, you know, give them special treatment. You know, you better help these people, but don't help these people. I've never heard anybody say that. I think people would be appalled to find out that we were using their tax dollars against them. And it's not just here. I'm sure some people, you know, if you follow the news, will have heard that the federal government, for instance, has declared that in the future they will only be hiring equity-deserving people, okay? So that's your own federal government saying that, okay? And that's why this is important. Strathmore is a very diverse community. It's been diverse since its inception. There have been people from all over the world that have moved here, from all walks of life, with all backgrounds, experiential backgrounds, and it has made it the community that it is today. We didn't need a declaration to declare ourselves diverse. We didn't need to have a declaration to declare that we were going to be treating people differently based on, you know, superficial characteristics, or, I mean, even, I guess, more kind of innate kind of characteristics, like whether you're a man or a woman, but, and inclusivity, you know, we are an inclusive community. We don't need to declare that. And furthermore, these things are not going to make Strathmore a more diverse community. It will not make Strathmore more equal, and it will not make it more inclusive. And that's why I can't support this, this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say that a lot of your comments come with suppositions. You have beliefs that certain things will emerge from this, and I don't necessarily agree with those. And as far as Strathmore always being multicultural and inclusive, diverse town, I don't think so. I moved here 40 years ago. It was nowhere near as diverse as it is now. It was nothing compared to what it is now. I just want to clarify, I may have misspoken. The original motion by Councillor Montgomery to switch the word equality for equity was defeated. And now we have a motion, the original motion, keeping the word equity in the motion, and that's up for discussion right now. So I will turn to Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to refute Councillor Montgomery's statement on the Government of Canada's hiring practices. The Government of Canada has made commitments, this is from their site, to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, as he said, and has implemented various initiatives to increase representation of underrepresented groups in the workforce. However, it is important to note that hiring decisions in the federal government are based on merit, as outlined in the Public Service Employment Act, and all applicants are considered based on their qualification and abilities, regardless of background or identity. And as far as this being, as you said, Your Worship, I can remember when our son was a minority of one and then a minority of three. So yeah, not so much.
Councillor Montgomery, and I just want to make sure we're staying on the topic of this declaration, if we're in agreement with the declaration that's being presented. Councillor Montgomery.
So I think what was read just now by the federal government is pretty clear. The federal government, I mean, like, they obviously aren't going to, I mean, like, they basically did come out right there and say, you know, we are going to be hiring along certain lines. And I think everybody will probably, well, maybe not, but some people might recall, this was probably about 10 years ago, there was a big news story about how people were applying for jobs on the federal government website. And when you clicked the box Caucasian, the application process actually ended. So I think that's kind of proof that not only is the federal government going to be practicing this, it actually has been practicing for some time. And then, of course, there are other positions, you know, in various levels of government where the position is actually held for certain people based on certain characteristics, whether that's, you know, racial or ethnic, if you want to call it that, or other types of you know, characteristics like that. Those jobs are held for those people. And Mayor Fuel, so when I talk about diversity, I talk about, as I mentioned, you know, people of different experiences, different backgrounds, different education levels, different viewpoints on life. And I think you proved my point, actually, and thank you for pointing out that to a lot of people, diversity is just code for different skin color. And so it's true that, yes, Strathmore has not always been the most racially diverse place, but that's not what diversity, you know, like, that's not all diversity is. And if we think that there's, you know, diversity of people simply because people look different, you know, they have different skin tones, I think we are probably making logically fallacious connections or leaps where there might not be warrant to do so. Thank
Well,
you.
I apologize if I made it sound like I was strictly focusing on race. There were not a lot of ethnic differences here or cultural background differences either. It was a very, very Western kind of a farming community. Not a lot of different cultures here, not a lot of different ethnicities. But that was my experience 40 years ago in teaching students and families of students, coming to know them. So we have a motion on the floor for the declaration. Are there any more comments on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Declaration. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Do you have the vote count there, Jonathan? Thank you. So we move now to a closed meeting. I'm looking for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I move that we go in camera at 6:56 PM.
And did you want to touch base on the sections?
Oh, yes, I can do that, your worship. I am just losing it. That council move in camera to discuss items related to section 24(1) subsection BI and 24(1)A of the Freedom of Information Protective Privacy Act at 6:56 PM.
Thank you. All in favor? And the motion is